Hello, my fellow readers, and I, Dark Symphony 777, with another review. So this one's going to be a little bit different. I actually kind of teased this me reviewing this thing when I did Storm Warning, the wrestling fan fiction, and let me just grab it. Let me just grab it right here. So I'm not going to be reviewing a fan fiction. I'm actually going to be reviewing an actual novel. Now, the reason I'm doing a novel is because of a promise I made to the author of the novel. So let me take you back to a flashback. Well, not really flashback. Tell you about way back ago. I reviewed a trilogy called "The Only a Girl Out of This World" trilogy, written by Lansing Storm. And I read it and I liked it, and I actually did a review on it. And when I told him, I said I plan on reviewing the story. He made the promise that if I do review this story, he's working on a novel, and he said if you're gonna do this, if you're gonna review the fan fictions, then you have to review the story when I eventually publish it and stuff like that. And I accepted the offer. And so flash forward like a couple years. He finally published a story. I couldn't get it at the time when it came out because of the simple fact I had no money. I didn't have a job at the time. I now have a job. I now have a steady income. So I bought the book, and this is the book. It's called Four Corners Edge: The Black Grimoire. So this review is gonna be a little different because I'm reviewing a actual novel. You can actually, the only place, as far as I know, you can get the book is on Amazon. It's only $11. If you want to read like an anime-esque story, then it's worth your time. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna actually look at the cover. Yeah, there's the cover right there. It shows the two main characters and the antagonists the two antagonists for the story on the cover. It has a very anime-esque light feel to it, and this is actually going to become a running theme throughout this video. It has a very shonen feel to it. So let's get started with the plot. So the plot is basically the first things first is this book actually reminded me of like a mid-2000s shonen anime called Zatch Bell, and it was basically it pretty much had the same premise. There is this war of 100 troops actually kind of came members to become the king of the Monados, and so the main character teams up with this guy named Zatch to try and become king of the Monados and prevent catastrophe. And I don't really know a lot about it because of the simple fact, it wasn't exactly a very good. It had its moments, but overall, I felt Zatch Bell was pretty forgettable as a whole. It had a very good premise, and I just don't think the premise was executed to what I think its fullest potential is. And so we kind of get the same idea here. So we have 100 of these inverse, which take the appearance of certain items, just like in Zatch Bell. Usually, whatever their powers their design are based on what their abilities are. So we have the main character Zatch. He basically just looks like a puppet with the yellow hair, black, and has two lines under his eyes, and he actually kind of reminds me of a light bulb. And sure enough, his powers are he uses electricity to fight. Makes sense. And the same thing here. So these inverts, they take the abilities of certain objects or certain relics, and whoever grabs them is gifted and is basically bonded with them for the rest of their life until they're drawn into this war where only one can survive. And the thing I think is better, I think this kind of does better than Zatch Bell, is the fact there's actually genuine risk, because Zatch Bell, all you have to do is burn the book, and then the Monado leaves, and then but the Monado's still alive. There's no risk to it. They made it very clear in Zatch Bell that if the burn books, they just go back to their realm. They don't die. If if the relic is actually broken, the inverse dies, like, permanently. And also, all the inverts are actually actively encouraging the people who wield them to kill everyone else. And so when they die, they actually, not only do the people die, the inverse dies as well, but also they're pretty much effectively erased from memory. And I think that's why I think this one does Zatch Bell better than Zatch Bell, because it actually has a genuine risk to in terms of the plot. We have an actual existential threat. Like, is it worth killing these people to make literally warping reality to make sure they never existed? So what is the risk of either letting him live or letting him die? So we have that neat idea that I think that sounds a lot like you read in a shonen anime, but it's in novel form. So yeah, so I'm probably not going to be showing the book again. So we have the main characters, Felix and Mercedes. Felix is an aspiring writer. Felix is more likely just a reference to the author himself, Thomas Turner. So, everyone's first story, it's usually an insert of some kind. I'm not gonna blame the author for any of that. It's just, something that I just mentioned. He was given the inverse lexicon, and lexicon is a book. Probably another reference to Zatch Bell, because actually, looking at the design of the book, and I remember the books in Zatch Bell actually have a slightly similar design. It's just 2 triangles instead of 1. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see how I can find it. What do I get? Let's see. While I'm looking it up, I continue. Mercedes has a ring called Sadra. She's allowed to manipulate her shadow. That's actually that figure right behind her, right there. That's Sadra. Zatch Bell. Oh. And then we have the main antagonist, Dr. Ignis, who has a staff with a garnet on it. That basically just allows him to shoot fire. Alright, so the plot is, Felix is just a normal kid. He just does nothing. I say, here he is. Come on. See, there's the spell books right there. And the comparisons to this story in Zatch Bell are just completely numerous. You have the idea, you have these. I just think the book actually did the idea better. You have the quest, you have the mystery behind the so-called Minato / inverse. Zatch had amnesia, while Lexicon is purposely hiding information about himself from Felix, and is purposely trying to kill everyone, all the other inverse, to prevent him from finding out more information about him. So it's a neat little difference, because you have Zatch, who doesn't know who he is, and Lexicon, who's trying to prevent everyone else from finding out any information about himself to his controller, because it's one part of the chapter that actually reveals that none of the other inverse really like Lexicon. They actually find he's like a colossus. Compared to other inverse, he's actually completely worse. So Lexicon has an air of mystery to it. Because we don't know his motivation, because unlike the other inverse who want to kill, who are encouraging their people to kill others, Lexicon is just saying, hey, use my power, I want to control you. It's like he's an unknown, he's an anomaly, and we don't know much about him. And then we have another character, Carter, who dies. He had a pair of scissors, and he basically allowed to cut Swarsha Wind, and basically cut open wormholes. So it makes sense depending on the item. So you have Lexicon, whose ability is, you basically write something, like the first thing he uses was a flashbang. He wrote down the word flashbang on it, and then he lifted up the book, opened up the book, and said flashbang, created a flashbang. That's the power. until Felix was allowed to completely kind of worm his way into a loophole by ripping off pages and using those as ammo, so that way Lexicon is protected at least somewhat. And then using a secret language, which was a nice use of Chekhov's gun. I wasn't expecting. I also like the fact that at the end of the story with the secret language. Sorry, this is my first time actually doing a book, so it's going to be confusing. I also like at the end, for the appendix, it actually shows how the secret language works, which I thought was a really nice touch. So that way, in case the other stories, because this is going to be a series, provided there's enough book sales to warrant a series. Because if the book makes enough money, it's like, okay, you can make a sequel. And as far as I know, I'm the first person to actually review the story. So sorry for getting off topic. Back to the plot. Felix got his first book published, actually sort of a meta moment referencing the actual book. Because this was Mr. Turner's first book, so it's kind of like a neat meta moment, which I thought was at least a little nice. And he's wandering home. He finds this weird building and this weird old lady who gives him lexicon, and it said, "Here you go." And then he takes him home, and lexicon starts talking to him, threatening his family, saying, "Yeah, if you don't do what I say, your family's gonna get killed." Felix immediately finds out that's bullshit, and then he finds out Mercedes has it. He runs into Carter, who has trust issues, and and then eventually becomes friends. And then Dr. Ignis shows up, attacks him, and then during a field trip, Ignis kills Carter, which causes everyone to erase him, and actually reality to alter. So his mom actually becomes older and on the brink of death instead of pretty young to give birth, which means this actually has consequences. This war has consequences, unlike Zatch Bell, which is just basically, okay, the burn book, you go home now. And the only real consequence is whoever wins. So it's not, so it pretty much is make Zatch Bell better than it already is. Take the same premise and try and push it as far as it can. And we get this story, or at least this part one, because there's going to be multiple parts. I can assure you, there's going to be multiple parts of the story, because the story does end with "to be continued." And so they eventually stop Dr. Ignis. They actually managed to break Flame Burrows. That's the name of his staff that allows him to use fire. They managed to shatter the gem, at least allowing him to have the staff. But, he doesn't get anything from killing other people, so he doesn't really have to kill anyone. He's still kind of mad. He tries to kill him. Felix ends up using a spell that Lexicon gave him to evaporate him, like literally destroy him to a molecule level, which I thought that's pretty dark. and then the story ends with saying that, the war is not over, because Dr. Ignis revealed that there's probably at least 50 people left, so there's still many people. We also had some cool ideas. We had a needle that allows us to create thread and tie up people, and basically works as a javelin. There was reference to a winged item that allows someone to use light and fly. There was bifocals that allows X-ray vision plus heat rays, and then we get a what was the name of this kid? Oh yeah, Xander, who I guess has some kind of, is up in the air because he has an inverse, but it's kind of vague how it's used. Probably like foresight, like allows him to see from far away. So probably some kind of sniping inverse that allows him to see from long distance, and probably has some ability to snipe him from long range. Or it could be more of a defensive type inverse that allows him to see everything around him. So there's an air mystery of what this Xander guy is, who he is, what inverse does he have. Ignis is dead. I think that was a shame. So anyway, that's the plot. Well, more or less. I still haven't gotten used to reviewing books. This is probably the only time I'm doing it, until the sequel comes out. Characters, we have Felix, Mercedes, Felix's sister Cammy, Carter, and Dr. Ignis. Felix is basically reminds you of a typical shonen anime, keeping up with the comparisons to Zatch Bell. So, he has lexicon, writes anything, he managed to finagle a loophole. We have Mercedes, who's basically kind of like a tomboy, who kind of who's actually pretty good. And I think they're both good. They have good chemistry with each other. They're like best friends who are trying to keep each other friend zone, but at the same time trying to go into a relationship. So it kind of makes the relationship kind of weird, but at the same time like a realistic weird. And then we have Cammy, who kind of I think she was the weakest character out of the group, mainly because she didn't have enough time to really nail down her character. She just looked like a typical overprotective little sister sort of figure. And then we had Carter, who actually had his inverse before all of them for like who knows how long, and had to keep moving around because everyone kept attacking him, because their inverses kept, kind of warping their minds and killing him. Say, kill him, become powerful, become God. And so he finally meets Felix, and then he finally managed to get trust issues, and finally when he's like, hey, we can be friends, he dies, and then everyone completely forgets about him outside of Mercedes and Felix because they actually have information. That's another thing. It's an air mystery how exactly the reality warping works, because we know he dies and everyone forgot about him, and reality actually warped to make sure nobody remembered who he was, but somehow Felix and Mercedes remembered who they were. And so then we also get a little grave that he'd actually taken pictures of, keeps them in like a little lockbox in an abandoned train station, as a sort of grave to all the people who have died, that he knows died so far, kind of referencing all the other people that he ran into. And at the end, they actually take pictures of themselves, knowing that sooner or later they might die, so in case, it might happen. So that way they effectively have a grave. But that's still a mystery of how it works, so it's like, what could happen? And then we have Dr. Ignis. Now, but Ignis, I'm gonna pose two of my three problems with the story. The first problem is none of the characters have descriptions to them, and this was a bugbear I mentioned in the Just a Girl trilogy. With fanfiction, you can get away with not describing the characters. So, for example, if you're reading a Mario story, a Super Mario story, and the main character is Mario, you already know what Mario looks like, so you don't really need a description on him. You can throw a description on him if you want to, but you don't have to throw a description on Mario, because anyone going into the story will kind of go in the assumption, okay, we already know what he looks like, so we don't need a reminder of what he looks like unless he's putting on something else. And the same thing kind of went for Just a Girl. It's like it had Crystal from Star Fox. We already knew what Crystal looked like, so we kind of already so we didn't need a description on her if we didn't want to. However, this is a novel. You gotta have descriptions for all the characters. Again, keeping up with the comparisons to anime. In anime, you don't have to write down, because the picture will actually show you. The cover actually shows you what Felix, Mercedes, and Ignis look like. So we don't need to, have knowledge of what they look like because it's already on the cover. But it would help if we knew what each of the characters look like. I don't know what Cammy looks like. I don't know what Felix's or Mercedes' family looks like. I don't even know what Carter looks like. All I know is he looks like a nerd. That's all I really know. And part of writing actual novels is to learn to the knowledge of trying to write a full-length novel. And one of the skills you have to learn is describing what the locations, what the characters, and the scenery, what everything looks like, so people can try and get as clear a picture as they can to imagine as best they can. I had to literally picture this as like an anime-esque thing. Again, more anime comparisons. This would work in anime. This would work in manga. This does not work in novels. It can work in fan fiction, provided you don't use any original characters, like in Just the Girl, where over everyone outside of Crystal was an original character, so we don't know what they look like. I didn't know what Light looked like. I didn't know what Nat looked like. I didn't know what any of the original characters in the Just a Girl trilogy looked like. I just took a wild guess of what they look like. So like Light from that story, when I imagined him in my head, like light brown hair, sort of like slightly skinny build, but has at least a little bit of it, and wears plain clothing. That's all I could get. And so you have to at least describe what the characters look like, because if not, then people are going to have a hard time trying to have proper connections to the characters. So you have to go through the whole gamut. You got to give them what they look like. You got to establish their character motivation. You have to establish the world around them. Without any of that, you can't really truly connect with the characters. Which leads me to my second complaint, is the fact I felt Ignis should not have died at the end of the story. Granted, I kind of saw him dying coming, but it doesn't help the fact that the story kind of needed two antagonists. So, and I guess you can kind of say Xander is going to become the other antagonist, because right from the get-go, the main antagonist is obviously going to be Lexicon, because he's hiding so much information. He's keeping his motivation secret. He's keeping everything about the inverse and the wars and the motivation secret on purpose, and is actually purposely trying to encourage Felix to kill Ignis, less out of, trying to win the war, and more out of trying to keep Ignis from revealing anything he doesn't want to know. That's what I got from it. Like, Ignis, he had Flame Burrows, he had him for a while, so I figured, there's a possibility that Ignis might drop something about Lexicon that he didn't want to reveal. So he basically kept trying to tell Felix, hey, kill him, take over have me influence you and kill him. And I just thought it as like another facet of Lexicon going through these extreme lengths to make sure possibly no information is dropped about him. Which I think, again, adds that air of mystery of where does Lexicon's motives lie, because in one part of the story, it's easily revealed that none of the other inverse like Lexicon. Nobody likes this guy, and yet they're incredibly vague on why. Was he a dictator? Was he an actually good guy in all the other inverse? No, I don't know, and it actually makes me want to read more the second story of the series over what is going on with Lexicon. What are his motivations? Why is he going to such extreme lengths to make everything intentionally vague? These are actual tropes that are actually used to their fullest potential, like keeping everything hidden and slowly revealing it over the course of the story. That's how you draw the reader in. Without that, you're pretty much stuck with something like Pokemon, like the Pokemon anime. The Pokemon anime has been garbage for years now. Back in the day, Pokemon anime was great. After Johto, they pretty much decided to, hey, let's just keep reusing the same things over and become stagnant. And now it's only until Sun and Moon that older fans of the anime, like myself, are actually getting into it, because they're at least doing something different. Like, I don't know, Team Rocket finally beating Ash, or Brock having a girlfriend. Seriously, I was completely flabbergasted at the fact Brock has a girlfriend. What's next, Miss? What's next? There's gonna be a whole two-part episode of all the girls from Ash's packs saying, I love you, Ash, and trying to gangbomb him. Like, that would just be weird. So, I don't think Ignis should have died. I think Ignis would have made a fine secondary antagonist, because it's, again, obvious Lexicon is being set up as the main antagonist, but in this situation, there needs to be two antagonists. One representing his moral dilemma, i.e. Lexicon, and someone who's trying to drastically oppose him to prevent him from changing the status quo, and I think Ignis would have made a good antagonist. He had a hacker skill. He was a curator at a museum who actually had an obsession, who actually liked to hack and kind of took money on the side, and kind of had an obsession with power. I mean, there was some stuff you could have done with him, like his love of history. You could have had something with his hacking skills, but it makes sense for me, a story standpoint, because of the fact Flame Burrows kind of caught up to him to the point he couldn't really think anymore, and he didn't like the fact that he didn't die, and so thought, hey, you destroyed my chances of winning, and I'm going to kill you regardless, which led to his death. Do I think it was a bad choice to let him die at the end? I don't. I think based on what I read, how it played out in the story, I think it made a lot of sense and from a storytelling aspect. Ignis dying was more just a wasted opportunity for me. And the final problem I had was, I kid you not, actual grammar errors in a novel. I saw 2 grammar errors. I can't remember the second one, but I do remember the first one. It was, I think it was page 33. Yeah, here it is. Here's the specific here's the specific thing. I'll name out the grammar error. Kimmy stole his attention as she knocked on the door. Felix, Mom and Dad are home early, she called. They want to us go out to eat tonight. They want to us to go out. You can get away with this stuff in fan fiction because, you have the authors, you have the readers there to kind of let you know, so here's a grammar error, fix it. Because nobody's perfect, you're not going to find anything. But when you're reading a novel and you see this kind of errors, that kind of means, oh my god, it's so cringy. I'm not a grammar Nazi, but I kind of expect no errors on actual novels because of the fact, they usually have proofreaders. They have sometimes, depending on the author, like James Patterson, they have a ghostwriter to help out if need be. They have to go through several drafts. There's so much time to plan out to make sure that everything is good, and from a character point, a plot point, a grammar point, a pacing point, and the fact that there's 2 errors. I can't remember what page the second error is on. I'll probably leave a comment where the second error is. I'll probably have to find it, but I shouldn't be reading an actual novel and see grammar error, much less too, from someone who actually wants to read and write, who wants to be a writer as a career. I think the author needs to have some kind of proofreader, either like a regular proofreader, just to keep everything from getting too out of place, or a ghostwriter like James Patterson does. But I think a ghostwriter is too expensive, so probably just ask someone to proofread for them to make sure that everything's okay in terms of grammar. But overall, I think the story is not bad. I think it has a long way to go to fulfill its big potential. And that's depending on if a second story gets published, because as far as I don't know how many copies of this sold. All I know is the author went through a lot of money just to get the first one published, because I know publishing a book takes about a couple $100. So I don't know the details on that, but there's also the fact that whether they want to publish a sequel depends on how many books are sold. The reason why Stephen King and James Patterson, they make series, less King and more Patterson. As far as I know, I don't believe King has ever done a sequel. Like Patterson with the Women's Murder Club, with NYPD Red series, it's because they sold a lot of books. And actual literature may be a slightly dying medium. I know it kind of hurts to say that because I love literature, but with the advent of fan fiction becoming more and more popular, to you know, and make it kind of becoming harder with people, harder and harder with people in these times where everything is offensive, where everything, you know, you read the wrong thing and it's like, I'm gonna, and lynching. It's possible slightly, and I don't want to say it, but I believe literature is slowly becoming a dying medium. I don't think it's in a decline yet, but I'm starting to see a sort of slow tumble. It's not. It's just. It feels like it's just started, but I worry what would happen if literature becomes a completely dead medium. I don't want literature to become a dead medium. I want to read till the day I die. I want to read to my little brother. I want to read to, well, not my little brother, my son. I want to read to my son. And so I dread what will happen if, because everyone is so afraid they'd have to do these ultra politically correct stories just to appeal to everyone, but at the same time appealing to no one, because of the simple fact everyone has their own taste in literature. You can't make a single book to appeal to everyone because nobody's gonna like it. If you write an adventure story, no one's gonna like that adventure story. Even among adventure story fans, they might not like the specific adventure story you're doing. Which is why you see stuff like this, you see stuff like fan fiction, and you realize that sooner or later even literature might become compromised. Biography, fiction, fine. I mean, not fiction, non-fiction, fine. You can just keep politics away from non-fiction or fan fiction, unless you're directly going for a political story, like a political drama, political horror, something like that. Something that revolves around politics. Don't try and say, here's a story, let me shove some politics, because the last time I found out about that, we got freaking the Conversion Bureau. We got the Conversion Bureau over at FIMfiction.net, and that probably was the first time I ever saw politics and all this stupid bullshit get it into literature, specifically fanfiction. The fact that it happened in My Little Pony is surprising, but the fact is it breached fanfiction as a whole just leaves a lot to be desired. It's like, why? I don't want politics in my fanfiction. I don't want this stupid stuff in my fanfiction. Especially since everything written by Shitoyans is garbage. I just realized I am getting off topic. And I just realized I'm constantly moving with my hands. That's just who I am. But back to the point, I'm worried that, eventually literature will become a dying medium. And I think it's slightly started now. We probably won't see the full decline for years upon years upon years. I don't know how long it'll take. Probably another 50, 60, 70 years. Who knows? But the fact that less and less people are buying books and preferring to go read fan fiction because they don't have to spend money on it, or with mangas, like there's websites dedicated to just reading mangas online. That's how I read Monster Musume, because where am I gonna find actual physical copies and buy them? Because I would actually buy the physical copies of Monster Musume. One, I don't have the money. Two, where would I buy them? Outside of Amazon, but they're actually overpriced at Amazon. But off that topic, sorry, I apologize for the rant. I just had to get it out of my, something I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. I just thought I at least talk about it now because it's relevant, because I'm reading a book rather than fan fiction. So, pacing. I actually think the pacing was fine. Again, it had anime. The pacing was something akin to anime, which really doesn't help in this situation because it worked in anime and manga, but not in novel form. It's okay with the pacing, but that's about it. Nothing too spectacular on the pacing. It speeds just enough that it gives you an slight intrigue to everything. So, favorite part. The favorite part of the story is not actually anywhere in the actual novel itself. It's actually the author's notes. Let's see, where is it? Oh yeah, it's two authors, one at the beginning, one at the end, and I'm actually gonna read them out loud. So the first author at the beginning, dedication. This book is dedicated to both my friends and family who have continued to support me during the good and bad times up until this point, and to the readers and writers of the fanfiction community. Without them, I never would have discovered my love of writing wonderful adventures. Lastly, I want to thank my savior for giving me this gift because it certainly wasn't genetic. I thought that was really nice, referencing the fanfiction community. And he actually does it again at the end. Let me get to the end. Get to the end. Oh, that's fine. About the author. Thomas Turner is a School of Education graduate from Indiana University Southeast. He also wrote fanfiction during his earliest writing years under the pseudonym Lansec Storm 5, who also wrote the Only a Girl trilogy, where he gained a love for writing and entertaining others with his written adventures. It is his dream and goal to someday be able to write full-time as an author and to inspire a love for reading for even the most reluctant of readers. I actually smiled at that because when it comes to the fanfiction community, whenever someone leaves the fanfiction community and goes into writing, they do whatever is possible to erase their fanfiction life from history. And most of it has to stem down with Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey, because Twilight is horrendously bad for a novel, to the point a lot of people even compared it to fanfiction. And 50 Shades of Grey was confirmed to be a fanfiction of Twilight turned into a novel. So I'm guessing people don't want to erase their fanfic because they're afraid of being compared to Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey. That's just my thought of it. That's just my theory. I actually love the fact he acknowledges the fanfiction community, which I'm a part of. I want to be a big part of the fanfiction community because I love reading. I love fanfiction. And just the fact that he acknowledged the community as a whole instead of something like the Star Fox community, because that's where he got his start writing Star Fox fanfiction. But acknowledging the community as a whole, I thought that was really touching. And the fact that he actually went out of his way to say, here's my fanfiction pseudonym, Lansec Storm 5, I thought that was really a nice touch, and it really, really says, like, hey, you don't have, and when I read it, and I thought of, you don't have to be ashamed to be a fanfiction reader to write these novels. You can forget about it. You don't have to be ashamed of who you are. Because to me, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what walk of life you come from. As long as you write good stories, I will review them and I will love them, provided it's something, that I like. Not everyone will like every other story, and that includes me too. I won't be able to like every single story. Sometimes it'll be for legitimate reasons, but sometimes it'll just be for not my cup of tea. It's something that I just don't like, but I'll understand that someone else might like them. But overall, I thought that was really touching. Acknowledging the community, acknowledging his past as a fanfiction writer, and especially at the end where he's doing this as a way to help people who are reluctant with reading. And I thought that was really, really nice. I thought that was really, really touching. Struck the heartstrings. And that was just a good piece of, admittance, saying that I'm a fan fiction writer. I'm proud of it. And I'm with you. I'm with you, Mr. Turner. I'm with you, Thomas. And I think Thomas actually deserves all of the love he does for doing something like that. I think he deserves praise for going out of his way of mentioning something that, for the most part, the mainstream literature is too afraid to mention because of all the stigma surrounding it. And that's my review on Four Corners. I'm sorry for one ranting twice, and also for the way the formatting was off. Again, it's my first time doing an actual novel. So that is my review on Four Corners Edge. Would I recommend it? If you're a curiosity reader, if you're a fan of like anime-esque novels, then go ahead. I think the story has a good enough idea to encourage people to get into writing and especially or reading. But I think most of the people are going to lambast the story for such strong resemblances to Zatch Bell, despite the fact I do think this story did that the idea of Zatch Bell better with actually putting risk to being part of this game. Uh, but look, there are a lot of comparisons to Zatch Bell. But overall, I don't want to properly recommend the story one way or another until I at least find out that the author is planning on writing a sequel. If he's writing a sequel or if he's going to continue the series, then I'm going to hold off judgment for recommending it. But if I find out he's not going to, by either his own admission or something out of his control, then I'll make add a little atom in like the description or comment revealing I'll give my thoughts on that in there. So that is my review on Four Corners Edge. This has been Dark 7777, and